The approach to psychology that believes that one should focus only on what can be observed. Don't say that loud, just wait. The correct answer is behaviorism. So nature versus nurture, according to Watson. Who's willing to read?
Give me a dozen healthy infants, well-informed, and my own specified world to bring them up in, and I'll guarantee to take any one at random and train him to become any type of specialist I might select. Doctor, lawyer, artist, merchant chief, and yes, even beggarman and thief, regardless of his talents, penchants, tendencies, abilities, vocations, and race of his ancestors. Watson, 1926.
Okay. Wow. What is he saying in this paragraph? He believes John Locke's theory. Which part? What does he believe? Experience? Nurture. That's where we are. It's all nurture. He's saying, give me any child, as long as it's a healthy child, and I will make it whatever you want me to. From the worst of the worst to the best of the best. And take a look, 1926. How did we feel about women in 1926? We don't like them very much. They're not equal to men. Did you see a whole lot of women lawyers running around? No. But he's saying, I don't care. Give me a female, and I will make it a lawyer if that's what you want. How do we feel about different races back in 1926? Unequal. Didn't really like them either, just like women. So he's saying, I don't care about their ancestry. I'll take any color skin. I'll take the women. I'll take the men. And I'll make them whatever you want me to. Wow, is that bold or what? He is definitely on the nurture side of the coin. I will put them in an environment that will make them what you want them to be. So if you want to jot that down. That is Watson. Watson goes with nurture. So here's a little overview over everything that we've done thus far. Kind of an end cap so you know how much you know. First off, the 4 disciplines that led to the emergence of experimental psychology are what? Philosophy, biology, medicine, and physics all came together to make experimental psychology, just in case you didn't write it down the first 20 times. Then we have 3 primary approaches to experimental psychology. We have 2 that are more in the philosophy world, and then we have 3 that are definitely in the psychology world. Which 3 are in the psychology world? Structuralism, functionalism, and behaviorism. There you go. Structuralism, functionalism, behaviorism. If we look at research methods, where do we start with our psychological research? Introspection, and then we ended up with, what's our last method? Started with introspection, ended up with experimental method applied to psychology. We're looking at an event or an environment and behavior. We have 2 major issues or assumptions. I like to call them arguments. Mind versus body is our first one. So just to review while it's up here, Cartesian dualism. What does Cartesian dualism say about mind and body? There you go. They're 2 separate entities, and they sometimes interact. Physics. Does physics argue mind or the body? Ooh, 50-50. Physics, mind or body? When we talked about physics, we talked about what? Mind, because we were using examples. What did they focus on in physics? Color vision and the experiencing. So there you go. Physics definitely is focusing on mind. Medicine is focusing on body. And then we have nature versus nurture. When we talk about DNA, are we talking about nature or are we talking about nurture? Nature. Okay, so when we look at nativism, is nativism focusing on nature or nurture? Nature. Empiricism is focusing on nurture. If we look at Galton, who is Galton? He defined nature versus nurture. And Watson, does he like nature or does he like nurture? Nurture. There you go. Which one of these is not like the others? Experientialism, structuralism, empiricism, functionalism. Don't say it out loud. Correct answer is A. Experientialism is the word that I made up. It is an ism, but it's a fake ism. So here we go. Now that we've been finally talking about psychology. We know where it came from. We know our first psychologist. What is psychology? The study of behavior, the brain, and their relationship to the environment. So behavior we talked about. Can't really argue behavior. So that's a good place to start. The brain, we can definitely study the brain. Its activity, what's going on. We can look at it through different technology that we have. Can't really argue that. Another good place to start. How they relate to the environment. When you're in this environment, what happens to your brain? When you're in this environment, what happens with your behavior? Another good place to not argue. So based upon these three aspects, we then take a guess at the relationship between behavior and mind, and brain and mind. That word guess is kind of funny. Ponder that as you're writing. So why do we use the word guess? Because we don't actually know. Why don't we know? Can't chop it up. Can't touch it. Can't measure it. Can't weigh it. I don't know what's going on in my mind. I don't know what's going on in your mind. Sometimes you don't know what's going on in your mind. So the mind is hard to study. So based upon all the information we have about behavior, brain, and environment, and the combination of those, now we get to start guessing, what does that mean about feelings, emotions, thought processes? Does that make some sense? Psychology subfields. Psychology, a lot of times we think it's just kind of doing experiments, talking about mind. Psychology has so many different aspects to it. Psychology subfields. So if we look at the very smallest area that you can study in psychology, you can look at genetics. Look at DNA, break it apart. You want to broaden the scope a little bit, you can look at anatomy and physiology. How does our bodily makeup affect some of our psychological aspects? Sensation and perception, seeing, touching, hearing, tasting, smelling. Learning and motivation, which is fascinating. We get to talk about that in here. Cognition, how we think. Personality, that's pretty blunt enough. Abnormal behavior, some of the different disorders. Social psychology, how you act in a social environment. And cultural psychology, how you act within your culture, are all areas of psychology. We get to kind of jump around in Psych 101. So if you don't like the DNA talk, that's okay. Eventually we'll talk about some other areas that are broader in scope. Okay, so that's all we have for history.